you all hear that. All right, well, good afternoon, fourth graders and fifth graders from St. Ed's. How are you today? Thumbs up or wave. Yay. Happy Friday. It's a warm one. It's going to be a nice weekend. Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Allison Swanson, and I am an instructor with North Central Iowa Ag in the Classroom. And I am coming to you live from a soybean field today. And where we are exactly located is we're actually across the Webster County line into Boone County, just a mile. And we're really close to the town of Boxholm. You Dayton elementary students will know exactly where that's at. But for my St. Ed friends who are joining today, that's about 25 miles south of Fort Dodge. And we're going to tell you a little bit today about harvesting soybeans, and you'll get to ride in a combine with me. That's this big machine right behind me. And you're going to be joined by a farmer who will tell you all about harvesting soybeans and ride along in the tractor with you. So I guess without further ado, everyone knows what a soybean looks like, am I right? I'm going to turn the camera and show you our farmer. Hello, farmer.
Hi.
This is Jeremy Swanson, and he is the farmer that will be doing your harvest farm chat today, and he is holding a soybean plant that we just pulled out of the field, and that's what we're harvesting today. So soybeans, we'll do a quick little review, but farmers like to grow soybeans to feed to their farm animals. We also get food products from farm animals or from soybeans that we eat every day. Like soy sauce or cooked with soybean oil that goes in some condiments like mayonnaise and salad dressings. Soy sauce in our Chinese food too, I like that. And also some soy milk, and tofu is made out of soybeans. It's high in protein, so farmers like to feed those to their farm animals because it helps build good muscle for farm animals. And then we can also make a fuel out of these soybeans called soy biodiesel. And that goes in our combines, our tractors, semi-trucks, and even some school buses too. So lots of good uses for our soybeans here. But some of you submitted some really awesome questions for our farmer today, and we'll address one of those right now. Mr. Farmer Swanson, are you married was one of the questions.
Yes, I am married.
And I'm his wife, so surprised everybody. Jeremy and I are married, and we farm together. We farm corn and soybeans. And we also grow sweet corn and peas as well. And we've been farming for what? On our own for just, he's been farming for 15 years, and I've been with him since we've been married. So about 9 years or 10 years. And we have 2 children. We have a 4th grader at Dayton Elementary School. Hi, Jolie. She is 9 years old. And then we have a 6-year-old boy named Garrett who is in 1st grade at Dayton Elementary School too. So, hey kiddos. Well, I'm going to turn it over to our farmer. You probably don't want to hear me talk anymore, but we're going to climb into the combine. But first off, I'm going to let him show you some key parts of the combine and how it works. So I'm going to turn it back around to our farmer. You can put that soybean down if you want. All right, it's on you, and I'll hand him the microphone so you can hear him.
Okay. All right, so let's walk around the combine a little bit. So what we're looking at right here in front is the head, sometimes called a platform. And how this works is there's really sharp knife sections down here on the cutter bar. And this cutter bar moves back and forth very, very fast as we move across the field. And the bean plants come through here, and that's what cuts the plant off. Then this reel spins round and round in circles, and it helps pull the bean plants back into that big auger cylinder that you see back in there. And then that cylinder brings it all to the center of the combine, where it starts to go through the combine so we can start separating the beans from the pods. We'll point out one thing. If you look up at the cab, above the cab, there's that yellow globe. What that globe is a GPS receiver. The GPS receiver talks to the satellites way up orbiting above the Earth, and those satellites tell us where we're at in the field so that the combine can actually steer itself, as well as allow us to make maps of what we're harvesting as we go across the field, and we can learn all sorts of information about what's going on in the field at a very specific points in the field because of the GPS receiver that's receiving that signal. Let's move on around the side of the combine here. So as we move from the head, you can see that area right underneath the cab. That's where all the beans come together and they're pushed up into the center of the combine. And then there's something called a rotor inside that's what separates the pods from the beans. The beans go up into the grain tank, which we'll be able to show you a little better once we get up in the cab. And then the pods and the stems and all the other trash will come flying out the back end of the combine. The last thing I'll point out, this long tube that you can see that sticks out past the end of the back of the combine, that's the unload auger. And that's what we'll use to get the beans out of the grain tank and into the grain cart when the grain tank gets full. So let's hop up in the cab and get going. Okay, so now we're in the cab of the combine, and I'll show you a couple things here. I mentioned the GPS receiver, that yellow globe that was on top of the cab. It's sending signal into this thing right here. And we got fancy names for it, but what it boils down to is it's a computer that's designed specifically for farmers. So it looks a little differently, shaped a little differently, but ultimately it's a computer. So what it does is it's making a map of the field as we go. And as the yield changes, as we produce more beans and less beans, it colors the map according to what it's yielding. It tells us on the go what our yield is, what our moisture of the beans are, how many acres we've covered, total bushels, and so forth. And so then when the season's done, all that data is saved in this computer, and I can put a USB stick in it and put all that data on a USB stick, and then I can take it into my office at home and put it on my computer, and I can start to do all sorts of analysis then. If I did any trials with different products in the year, I can see what worked better and what was worse, and we can make decisions for next year based off these maps that we make. All right, I think we'll fire it up and start combining beans. These beans are a little wet this morning. I guess it's afternoon now, but they're still kind of wet, so we can't go very fast, and we have to be very careful because sometimes they won't cut very good when they're still wet and green, and then they'll bunch up and plug the combine up. So we got to be careful at times. So these beans would have been planted somewhere around the 1st of May. We plant about 140,000 seeds per acre. I used to plant a lot more than that, but with new technology and new techniques of developing the beans that we plant, the beans today are able to produce more seed at harvest time with fewer plants per acre. So at one point in time, we were planting 180, 200,000 seeds per acre, and today we're down to 140,000. And there's actually a lot of research being done right now showing that we maybe only need to be planting in the neighborhood of 100 to 120,000. So we're getting better at doing more with less. We would have provided these plants with some plant food, fertilizer, either last fall or this spring. Soybeans need a lot of potassium. They take a little bit of phosphorus, but a lot of potassium and a fair amount of sulfur. So as we're removing these beans from the field, those beans are taking some of those nutrients with them. And so we need to replace those nutrients into the soil so that we don't deplete the soil of those nutrients. So we're sure we got enough for next year's crop.
What have the soybeans been yielding so far?
Most of the soybeans have been running between 60 bushels and 70 bushels per acre, which has been very, very good. It's been a long time since we've grown soybeans this good. Most times they're probably between 45 and 55 bushels per acre. And actually in some fields this year, we've actually been above 70 bushels per acre. So it's been a very good soybean harvest. If you want to turn the camera around, you can see in the grain tank that I talked about, the beans that are in there have been separated from the pods on the plant and are now piling up in the grain tank. That grain tank holds, I think, about 275 bushels of soybeans.
How did you become a farmer?
So my dad was a farmer and my grandpa was a farmer. And I spent a lot of days growing up when I was a kid riding with grandpa and dad in the tractors and combines, and I just fell in love with it. And so after I went to college and got my college degree, then I was able to come back and start help farming a little bit. We're a pretty small farming operation, so we don't farm enough for me to be on the farm full time. So I also have another job that I work at through the summer and winter, and just kind of part-time in the spring and fall. My dad's retired now, but he still helps me. He's running the semi today. We might see him here after a bit and can wave at him. But one of the challenges of being a small farmer is, like this combine here, this is a very expensive piece of equipment. I'm not sure exactly what this combine costs, and we've had it several years now, but it probably costs somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000 to $300,000. To go buy a brand new combine today, it would probably cost somewhere around $500,000 to $600,000. Combines are very expensive, and that does not include that bean head that you're watching right now, which could be anywhere from a used one that costs maybe $10,000 to a brand new one that costs $100,000. So it's very hard for me to afford that. So what we did about 10 years ago was I partnered up with my neighbor who was needing some help, and he had a nice combine and ours was ready to be retired. And so we partnered up with him. So actually he owns the combine and the head, and I own the tractor and grain cart that we'll see in a minute, as well as the semi, and then we share labor. So we work together to harvest each other's crops. And it has worked very well for us over the last 10, 11 years.
Why aren't your hands on the steering wheel?
So that yellow GPS receiver we talked about earlier, the other thing it does is it sends signals to a computer inside the combine that tells the combine how to drive itself. So right now the combine is driving itself and I don't have to worry about it, which is really handy in beans because there's a lot of things to watch and be aware of. And if I don't have to worry about driving, that allows me to focus on doing a better job of cutting soybeans. It also allows us to be more efficient because we know we take an exact header width, a full head width of soybeans every time across the field. So we know we're getting as many feet of soybeans in as we can with each pass.
Jeremy, this is Starling's last ask. What happens when this hopper gets full? How do you unload it?
Yep. We'll actually show you that here in a minute, but I will put the unload auger out and the tractor and grain cart will pull underneath it. And then the unload auger will move the beans from the grain tank over to the grain cart.
What are those sounds telling you?
Well, a whole lot of things, but John Deere combines like to just beep a lot. It's telling me the head's up. It's telling me the auto steer is no longer running. And now when I put the head back down, it beeps again and telling me the head was down. And then when the auto steer turned back on.
What color of combine or tractor do you prefer? Red or green or blue or yellow?
Well, I've always kind of been a fan of the red combines. But they are all good machines. In my off-farm job, I have worked on a lot of different colored equipment, a lot of different colored combines, and they are all very good combines. They all have their advantages and disadvantages, but what most times kind of determines what a person buys is often what dealer is closest to them. So we actually have a green combine dealer, a John Deere combine dealer, about 5 or 6 miles from us here, which makes it really nice for getting parts when we break down, or getting a mechanic to come out and work on the combine if we break down. Whereas the closest red dealer is about 25 miles from us. So that's kind of what drives our decision a lot of times on what color of equipment to buy. But yeah, I do like the red ones. So I'm going to put the unload auger. You'll see it coming out here shortly. Don will pull underneath that. And because I'm using auto steer and the combine's driving itself, we're able to set the exact same line in the tractor so that he can auto steer in the tractor as well, eliminating some pressure on him to try and drive straight while we're dumping on the go here. I'll pull under and match my speed. He's set. The beans coming out shortly.
Farmer across the road.
Yes, full wagon headed to the elevator. So when the semi gets back, which it looks like it just did, John will go dump these beans onto the semi, and then the semi will take the beans to the elevator and box home, about a mile away from us, and unload them there. And from there, we can sell them. And and that's how we make our money to pay our bills. One of the challenges with being a farmer is the price of our soybeans is constantly changing, and those prices are set by people, by investors, by a market that I have really no control over as a farmer. So things that happen all over the world can affect the price of soybeans right here in Boxholm, Iowa. And so this year, the price of soybeans is pretty high. It's up over 12 bucks, or right around $12 a bushel. So $12 a bushel and 65 bushel beans, we're going to have a pretty good year farming, income-wise. But what people may not remember, if they're not farmers, is that for the last about 7 or 8 years, the price of soybeans has been very low. And so if we didn't have exceptional yield, we oftentimes weren't making any money. And if we were breaking even, or maybe just slight positive income. So farming is a challenge in that we don't know from year to year if we're going to make any money, if we're going to be able to pay all our bills. We just have faith that we will be able to. And over the years, it tends to average out, and we're okay. But this year is going to be a good year, so it makes it kind of fun.
Do you have livestock on your farm?
I do not have livestock. Nope. And when I was a kid growing up, we had some hogs. We had some pigs, and I raised pigs a little bit growing up, but due to the way the market was with pigs at the time, we eventually got out because we weren't able to make any money at raising hogs. So we do grow. So what I do differently is, as Alice had mentioned earlier, is I grow a field of peas and a field of sweet corn for a food company in Minnesota. And that has been a fairly profitable option to diversify my farming operation to help me manage the risks that are involved in farming. And so if you ever go to the grocery store with your parents and you're in the frozen food aisle and you see bags of frozen vegetables from Bird's Eye Foods, there's a chance that maybe the peas or sweet corn in those bags were grown on my farm. We've kind of struggled here in Iowa to really grow good peas or sweet corn. And so I've kind of been working with the food company to try and find ways to increase our yields in Iowa. And I tried some different things on my peas this year and had a lot of success with it. I actually had the highest yielding peas in Iowa, and I believe the second highest yielding peas in Iowa and Minnesota. So I'm kind of excited about that. Hopefully with that we can maintain that again next year, and I can start working with some of the other farmers in the area to help them grow better peas as well.
How would you guys like to hop into the tractor? See what it's like to watch the combine unload as we go. Well, we're going to do it anyway. So hold on while we pause here. And then I guess you can kind of see, I'll show you the semi here. That's what the grain cart will load into with that semi, and the semi will take the beef to the elevator. So we're going to switch spots with John here. He's going to take over the combine, and we're going to go drive the grain cart. Hopefully I don't fall down the stairs.
start. You notice the grain cart has an unload auger similar to what the combine has.
Hold that. He's got to use his hands now. So I'll hold the microphone. That's Jeremy's dad sitting in the semi.
Everybody wave when we go by. We'll see if he's awake.
He might be taking a nap. We'll see. Being the semi driver during soybean harvest isn't necessarily all, hi, oh, he's awake. That's Charlie. Papa Charlie, as my kids call him. But soybeans, harvesting soybeans is a lot more of a slower pace than harvesting corn. There's just less yield, and with soybeans, like Jeremy said, you got to go a little bit slower because they can be tough, they can be a little wet, and it always seems like if something's going to go wrong harvesting, it's probably going to happen with beans. So
This semi will hold about 900 to 1,000 bushels at a time. The grain cart that I'm pulling behind the tractor here will hold about 600 bushels. So not quite 2 grain carts to fill the semi.
you think you'll be wrapped up with beans by early next week, or when do you think?
Yeah, we're getting close. If we have a couple, we need about 3 good days of running to get finished up with soybeans. The problem we've had this fall is that we've had a lot of very dewy mornings. So when you walk outside and the grass is wet, that slows us down from combining beans because beans take on that moisture overnight. And we've had a lot of dewy mornings, and we haven't had much wind lately. And so without wind and dewy mornings, a lot of times we don't get started till 11 or 12 o'clock, and we can't run much later than about 7, 8 o'clock at night. So that's kind of slowed us down a little bit this year, but everybody's in the same boat. Sounds like tomorrow the wind's supposed to blow though, so we're hoping we can get an earlier start, maybe around 9 or 10 o'clock, and maybe we can run a little bit later into the evening. I think they're calling for rain next week, so we're hoping to get the beans out before the rain starts.
We had a message or a question come in from Mrs. Hayes about how long does it take to do a field?
Oh gosh. So this is what we're in now is an 80-acre field, and I think we can combine when we're running smooth. We can run about 10 acres per hour. So this field will probably take somewhere around 8 to 9 hours. It takes a little longer to get the end rows off and get the field opened up before we can just go back and forth like we're doing now. So it's probably 8 or 9 hours to do a field like this. When things are going good, we're running hard. We can usually get about 100 acres a day. I think the biggest day we've had is 120 acres in a day. There again, it takes time. Usually end up having to move fields, and going down the road takes time, and opening up takes time. And so about 100 acres a day is a good day.
What's your favorite thing to do when you're not farming? I put you on the spot there.
No, it's when I'm not farming, probably going to my kids' activities and spending time with my kids.
Aw. Do any of your kids like to farm, or do they know how to drive a tractor? That's another question we got.
So my boy Garrett, he likes to farm and will come with me sometimes, and I am starting to train him on how to run the tractor.
So he's 6. Mom says we gotta wait a little bit longer, but it's good to start at least learning the basics right now.
I think I was 5 or 6 years old when I started learning how to drive a tractor, and so I figure it's a good time to start.
This question made me giggle. From St. Ed, do you like potatoes?
I do like potatoes. I like mashed potatoes. I like fried potatoes. I like French fries. Yes, I do.
That's a great question. When was your worst year of farming that you've ever had?
I think it was in 2012. We had a very bad drought, and I remember combining corn. Corn normally yields between 180 and 200 bushels per acre, and we were combining corn that was yielding 34 bushels per acre. That was a pretty tough year. And the year after that wasn't a whole lot better, because in the spring of 13, it rained and rained and rained and rained and rained, and we actually had some acres that we were not even able to plant that spring because there was so much water.
Got a question. What are your favorite foods?
Chocolate and peanut butter, Reese's peanut butter cups. I like chips and salsa, and about every kind of meat.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, you were talking about how Garrett likes to farm, but Mrs. Hayes' class wants to know if Jolie likes to farm.
Well, Jolie will have to answer that question for herself, but she hasn't been out and ridden with me much. But we do practice farming on the living room floor with our farm equipment in the living room at home, and she does pretty darn good at running the combine there.
For Mrs. Reynoso's class, my daughter is in a 4th grade class, that's also on our FarmChat, so we got to see her. Hi, sis. So if any of you, I'm sorry, if you need to go, feel free to log off. We were going to try to catch John here and unload. But you can stay on. We'll probably just stay on another 5 minutes. But if you need to get onto something else, please feel free to sign off. And thanks for joining us. But we're headed down the field now. We're going to catch John, and then we'll say goodbye. How fast are we going right now?
Going 12.5 miles an hour.
Great.
The combine we're running between 3.5 and 4 miles an hour right now. In the past, we've been able to run 5 or 5.5 miles an hour. In previous years, when the beans are drier and the stems are drier, but this year with it so green, we aren't able to drive as fast. So it's taking us a little longer to harvest.
Kind of bumpy. Sorry if I'm all over the place. Hard hard to hold this still while
You can see all that stuff coming out the back end of the combine. That's all the pods and stems that are being chopped up and thrown out the back.
pretty dusty. The auger just came out. Jeremy's going to try to catch him. I'm going to hold that. This is called dumping on the go. You can see back here, Jeremy's got all of his supplies that he needs for the day. He's got his backpack that has his laptop computer in it, so he can do his off-farm job while he's waiting in between catching the combine. Got snacks, a whole lot of snacks. His lunch. He makes his own party mix right there. So he doesn't go hungry during the day. Okay, how long is the combine head? Let me look at the chat here. Oops. Sorry about that. How long is that auger?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to guess somewhere in the 25 or probably 25 feet.
25 feet long. And how long is the combine, you know?
It's probably about the same, 25 feet. The bean head is 30 foot wide. I do know that one.
Good question.
It's always amazing to me how the cutter bar on the bean head can just glide across the ground and cut every one of those beans so nice and even, and not make a mess. It's just amazing to me how it can glide like that across an uneven field. Are there any other questions?
What happens if the combine picks up like a rock or something that's not supposed to?
That's usually a bad day. When the combine picks up a rock, or actually last night we picked up about a 2-foot section of an old fence post. There is an area right underneath the cab of the combine that's designed to catch rocks if they come through. And so we dump that regularly to make sure that we get rid of those if there are any. But occasionally one does go all the way through the combine, and it can cause a lot of damage on the inside of the combine. So that's one of the things we're really watching for when you're running the combine, is you're watching for rocks to make sure we don't put one of those through. one of the advantages of auto steer, that you can focus on that more. One of the other things we do is we do no tillage. Won't spend a lot of time on this, but in the spring before you plant, a lot of people will run a tillage tool through the field and really turn the soil black before they plant into it. Well, when they do that, they can pull up rocks that are buried beneath the surface. When you don't do any tillage at all, there's no way for the rocks to come to the surface. And so that's something we don't have to worry about as much since we are no-till. So we don't have too many problems with rocks.
Okay, one last question. What kind of semi do you have?
That semi, the red tractor in front there is a Volvo, and the grain trailer is a Wilson grain trailer.
Hey. Well, I hope we got most of your questions answered today. I'll take that from you. So we should probably sign off and let our farmer get back to his job. So thank you so much for doing this for our 3 classes this afternoon. And thank you to all of you who joined us today on our Harvest Farm Chat. We really appreciate you wanting to learn more about agriculture and what's going on with Iowa agriculture. So have a great weekend, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you all later.
Thank you.
You're
You're all on mute. Bye.